Hey, I'm going to show you how to glaze your pots in ceramics glass using either low fire glazes or high fire glazes. Let's get started. Come along. So first, I need to find my bisqueware. I need to find my pots that have been fired the first time. I need to make sure they didn't blow up. And I need to check to make sure that they've been bisque fired before I glaze them. Okay, oh look, hey, there's my pinch pots. They are here on this shelf near the pottery wheels. I'm going to take my two pinch pots and I'm going to rinse them because there is a chance that some dust has settled on those pinch pots or whatever it is that I've had fired while they've been sitting here in the room. Or even worse, if somebody's pot blew up in the kiln, then little shards of that person's pot might have settled on my pots. So I'm going to give them a quick rinse underwater. And as soon as you are done rinsing them, listen to them. They're going to be talking to you. They're going to be snapping and crackling. And what that sound is all the air that is trapped inside the open pores of your clay being kind of popping out when the water hits it. So for about 10 seconds after you rinse it, your pots are going to talk to you like Rice Krispies. Next, I need to make a decision. How am I going to glaze my pots? Here's how you're going to make your decision. There's two different kinds of glaze that I talked about in the glaze video. One is low fire glaze, and the benefits of low fire glaze are that the colors are very predictable, very bold, very bright, very shiny, very food safe. That is why you might want to choose to glaze with low fire glaze. And for my pumpkin pot, I want to make my pumpkin pot orange with a black mouth and black eyes. So I want predictability. I want very specific colors. I don't want them to run. That's how I'm going to glaze this pot. Here we go. Let's try it. Here's the glaze area for low fire glaze. So I'm going to take my pot and I want to use orange and black. So here's how I find the right colors. Right here in this yellow bucket are test tiles that show me all the different kinds of colors of glaze that I have over here. And the reason I have test tiles for low fire glaze is because see this beautiful royal blue? If I look at it in the jar, the liquid inside the jar looks pink, but this is actually going to turn out royal blue. So I have to look at the lid and read what's written on the lid. So first I'm going to look at the test tiles and find out what kind of colors it is that I like. Then I'm going to look for the jar that has the same name. When I find the jars of colors that I want, for example, I want orange and black. So those are the colors I'm going to grab. Orange, black. Each one I'm going to make sure the lid is on tight. I'm going to shake it up. And then I can't take the whole jar back to my table. Instead, I'm going to grab one of these cups, the same cups that we used for water. I'm going to make sure it's clean, no clay residue in there. And I'm going to pour a little bit of the colors that I want in these cups. So I'll have 1 cup for orange and 1 cup for black. Incidentally, these glazes, some of them haven't been used since last December. So if the lid is stuck on tight, run some hot water on the lid. Yeah, like this one. Run some hot water on the lid. There we go. And that'll melt any dry glaze that's on there. So this is black. I forgot to shake it. Shake, shake, shake. Open it up. Pour some glaze out. I need much less black, so I'm just going to put a little bit of black in there. Okay, now I need paintbrushes. So I've got big paintbrushes right here, right above where the glazes are. And then over here, next to where Ms. Schmidt usually keeps her computer, are tiny paintbrushes right here. So I'm going to grab a tiny, and I'm going to grab a big paintbrush, or bigger anyway, so that I can do all my glazing. Now, with low fire glazes, I need at least 4 layers. How many layers? 4 layers. How many layers? 4 layers to be able to have true color, food safeness, and shine. So some kids get bored after painting a layer and they're like, meh, that's good enough. But you know what? Your pot's gonna look kind of crappy if you only do 1 layer. So do how many layers? 4 layers. Okay, so I'm gonna do the detailed stuff last because that's the part that I want to be the most neat. So I'm gonna take my paintbrush and I'm gonna start by painting the inside because I don't have to be very neat about that. So I'm going to, so I'm doing lots and lots and lots of layers, 4 layers all the way around. Now I wanna make sure I get the rim of my pot. Now I'm getting to the outside, and here I need to be a little bit more careful. When I'm painting around the mouth and the other features of my pumpkin, I'm being a little bit more careful. No, a lot more careful. Because even though I can go over it with the black, the colors are gonna mix in the firing process. And so I'm not getting too close to the features because I'm gonna use my tiny paintbrush to get really close to the features. I'm just kind of getting generally close to the features. Okay, and now that was just my first coat on the outside. So now I'm gonna go through and do my second coat on the outside. So now I'm gonna get those details closer to my facial features. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Somebody didn't wash their brush. Look how my color is getting mixed with something that was in this brush. Naughty, naughty. I have to go clean this brush. Don't you hate it when people ruin your life by not cleaning up after themselves? You would never do that, would you? No, you wouldn't. So I'm going right up to the edge of my designs, trying to be as careful as I can. Okay, now I'm going to use my tiny brush to get inside the actual lines. Let's see how that goes. I'm going to put the brush in there. Okay, there's one eye. Now, how many layers do I have to do in that eye? 4. So I'm going to do it again. Second layer. Maybe I'll wait for that one to dry. It's still pretty wet in there, so I'll start the first layer of some of my other spots. I'm holding this up in the air so you can see it. You're going to be much more stable doing this on your table. Now, I have all 4 of my layers of orange and all 4 of my layers of black. I'm trying to decide what I want to do in the mouth though. Maybe I just want that mouth to be white. So in that area where I just want the natural color of the clay to show, I'm going to use clear. Clear is the only glaze that's in a different spot over here. Most of our glazes are in jars like this. Clear is in this big jug right here. And it looks pink, but it's not pink, it's clear. So I'm gonna shake it up as well, pour it in its own container, and I'm gonna use the clear, which again, is going to look pink, and I'm gonna use that in the inside of my mouth. And again, I'm gonna do 4 layers inside the mouth. So I know this looks kind of funny. Okay, there we go. Now, Next thing I need to do with my low fire glaze, once I know I have my 4 layers on the whole thing, there's one thing I have to check, and that's the bottom. If any glaze has snuck around the bottom of the pot, it's gotta be wiped off. If you think about it, when your pot is going through the glaze firing, it becomes a molten ball of lava. And as that lava cools, what does it do? It hardens. And so if there's lava on the bottom of your pot, it's gonna harden and fuse your pot to the kiln. And I'm gonna have to get out my hammer and my chisel, and I'm gonna have to chisel your dumb pot out of my kiln. And I don't wanna have to do that. So wipe your bottoms, people, wipe your bottoms. What that means is you're taking a sponge, a big sponge, just make sure it's a little bit wet, and then just use it to polish the bottom of your pot. That glaze will come off really quickly. Look at how that came off so nicely. So all you do is a little polish, polish, polish back and forth. Make sure there's 0 glaze on the bottom. It's in these crevices right here, but that's okay. It can be in those raised areas. It just can't be on whatever touches the table. That has to be glaze free. Then when I'm all done with that glazing of my low fire glaze and I've wiped the bottom and everything's looking good, I'm gonna put my glazed piece on this cart right here. This cart that's next to where I got my low fire glaze. When you place your pots on this cart, put high fire glaze pieces on the top 2 shelves and low fire glaze pieces on the bottom 2 shelves. Make sure you get it right. And then I'm done. All I have to do is wait for Ms. Schmidt to put my pots in the kiln, glaze fire them, and then they'll be out for me to take home and to drink my hot cocoa out of. So that's what you're gonna do if you wanna use low fire glazes that are colorful, predictable, and food safe. But what if I wanna use high fire glaze? Let's go figure that out. I have another pinch pot right here. And this one doesn't have any sort of designs that I need to be a certain color. Like the pumpkin, I wanted the pumpkin to be orange. But on this one, maybe I want to be a little bit more artsy-fartsy and a little bit more experimental with my glazing. Then I get to use high fire glazes. High fire glazes fire up to 2100 degrees Fahrenheit. That's where they vitrify and melt. And I gotta tell you, they're tricky. These are glazes that are runnier. These are glazes that are more unpredictable. You never know exactly how they're gonna turn out. I do have some test tiles right here. This is in between the sinks. So I have little pots that show me the different glazes, and then the name is on the bottom. And I also have these little test tiles that tell you what the color is, and the name is on the back. So if I look through here and I find a glaze that I like the look of, I would find the name of that glaze, and then I would look in the buckets right here. These are where your high fire glazes are. Now I want to use a glaze called Blue Rutile because it's a really beautiful, really predictable glaze. And I'm also going to use a glaze called Metallic Black, okay? So you can see one is more shiny than the other, one is less shiny, one is more satin. So this is the one that's not gonna be food safe. So I could use this on the outside of my pot and this on the inside of my pot. And the nice thing about high fire glazes is you can mix them and kind of have one go over the other, and they produce a really nice result. So let me get out those 2 colors, Rutile Blue and Black Metallic. Here's Rutile Blue. Here's Black Metallic. Okay, now these glazes also, some of them haven't been used since last December. So I'm gonna need to stir them up. So right here are some spoons, and there's also 1 whisk. So I'm gonna use this whisk and I'm gonna stir up the Blue Rutile. And then because I don't wanna cross-contaminate my glazes, I need to wash my whisk before I use it on the Black Metallic. So make sure you're getting all that gunk that's up off the bottom of the bucket, because the gunk is the good stuff. That's where all the nice chunky color is located. So you wanna make sure that all the stuff is stirred up really well. Now with the high fire glazes, you have a choice. You can paint them on by hand with a brush, and you would do, if you're gonna paint them on by hand, you're gonna do 2 or 3 layers of hand-painted glaze. Now, if you are doing your leaf bowl, I would strongly encourage you to paint your layers on. And here's, well, let me show you the pinch pot thing first. So let's say I have my pinch pot. I've rinsed it. I know I've rinsed it already. So here's what I would do first. Right here are some little cups. So I'm going to use the Rutile Blue to be what's called the liner glaze, what's going to go on the inside of my pot. So I'm going to scoop up that Rutile Blue. See how it looks red? See, this is one of the reasons why high fire glaze is really deceptive. You can't trust the liquid. You have to trust the test tile. So I'm going to pour that glaze into my cup, and then immediately I'm going to swish it around and then pour it back out, turning as I pour. There's one little spot. Can you see that one little spot inside there that the glaze didn't get to? So I'm going to try and steer the glaze and use my fingertip to get it to cover that little spot. So pouring it in there one time is the same as hand painting it 2 or 3 times. So if you poured the glaze in, you just need to do that one time. And then you can see the drips that I got out there. I'm going to get rid of those drips by dipping the top half of my pot in this Rutile Blue. I'm just going to do one quick dip and then pull it back out again. Let it drip, give it a little shake, shake, shake to get those drips out of there, get that excess glaze out of there. And then the Rutile Blue that's on the outside is going to be mixing with the Rutile Blue that's on the inside, so that's perfect. It's all going to melt together. My little drippies are gone. Incidentally, if you dip and then automatically turn it right side up, you're going to get more drippies. So you got to be patient. Hold it real steady until all those drippies are gone. So again, remember, one quick dip. And then that dip is the same as hand painting it 2 or 3 times. So you wouldn't dip and dip and dip and dip. That would create almost certain tragedy because your glaze would run all over the place. And again, I'll have to get my hammer and my chisel and break your pot out of my kiln. So one dip will do ya. Now, on the other part of my pot, I want to dip it in the black. And I need to make a decision. Do I want to dip it so the black overlaps the blue a little bit? Because sometimes when different glazes mix, they make a whole new glaze that we can't even predict how it would turn out. Or do I want to leave a little strip of bare clay showing so that there's a little bit of unfired clay in between the 2 glazes? I think that might look kind of cool. So I'm going to try that. So I'm going to try and carefully dip this as quickly as I can, but still be careful, in the black. Okay, and now when I pull it out again, see that strip of unglazed clay? I think that's going to look really cool to have that little gap, that create that little tension between my 2 colors. So I got to give it a little shake, shake, be patient for it to drip and dry. Now, what problem did I create for myself here by dipping it like that? I got glaze on my bottom. I got to wipe my bottom. So I'm going to take my sponge here in a moment as soon as I can safely. I got a drip. See, I turned it right side up too quickly. Learn from my mistakes. Luckily, the drip is centered in the middle, so it almost looks like I meant to do it. And now I'm going to take my sponge that almost got it clean. One more time should do it. Take my sponge, give it a little, oh, I ruined it. Give it a little polish. My bottom is clean. Now it is ready to take over and put on the same cart that I put my other pot. Okay, they're all gonna go over here. On your leaf bowl specifically is how you can layer them to get a cascade effect. So I have 3 colors here. These are the 3 colors that I've chosen because they all look like they would look really nice together, and they remind me of fall colors. So I've got bronze Tomoku, which I know you can't see it, but it actually sparkles in the sun. Amber Celadon, and Flame. So I'm going to start with my darkest color, which is the bronze Tomoku, and I didn't stir it up yet. Oops, I'll use my paintbrush to do that. And I'm gonna put kind of a sloppy coat around the outer edge of my leaf. So I'm not worrying too much about it being neat because I'm gonna put other colors that overlap on top of it. So, and it's all gonna melt together in the firing. So the neatness of this layer really doesn't matter. I do, however, wanna make sure I have my edge all the way around. Okay, now I'm gonna come through and do my second layer, because when you're painting on a high fire glaze, you wanna have 2 painted layers or 1 dipped layer. Okay, so there's my Tomoku. Now I have a different brush and I'm gonna go into my flame. And I'm gonna let this flame overlap my first color by a little bit. So it's a little bit in the zone of the first color, but it's also kind of having its own space more toward the center. So I'm gonna do a second layer of that. And again, I'm not being super cautious with how neat I'm being, okay? And then my final layer is gonna be the amber celadon. And the amber is kind of a see-through yellow. So I'm gonna put a glop of that here in the center, almost in a heart shape, to mix with the flame. So it's gonna overlap the flame a little bit. It's gonna be hard to see because these glazes are all very similar in color. But basically, I have 3 different colors here that are all overlapping the color that came before. And when this comes out of the kiln, I'm gonna get some interesting mixing and cascading as all the glazes run toward the center as gravity brings them toward the center. And I would do the same kind of thing on the outside, starting with the Tomoku and then the flame and then the amber. And maybe I could paint the amber inside here and then I would have to wipe the foot. So I'm gonna do that too to finish it. Oh, now as it dries, you can see it a little bit better, how the different colors are still there. So if you have a leaf bowl to glaze, I would definitely hand paint it because you can control it better and create that nice cascade as one layer mixes with another layer, mixes with another layer. So I mentioned there were a couple other special types of glazing that you could use on your projects as well. The leaf bowl, for the leaf bowl, you can use 2 of those special techniques. One of them is using stain. So I'm gonna use stain on this leaf bowl. I have some stain in this cup right here. It's in a different spot than the glazes. So if you wanna use the stain, just ask and I will tell you where the stain is. Okay, so the stain is different from glaze because it's just pigment. There's no silica in here, there's no alumina in here, there's no flux in here. It's just color. And the color that this is brown, and it's created by iron. So basically you're painting little tiny particles of iron all over your project. And so I just painted on 1 layer. Now I'm gonna flip it, and I'm gonna stain the backside as well. And the nice thing about stain is because there's no silica in it, it won't get shiny and sticky in the kiln. So it is actually okay to put stain and only stain on the bottom of your pots. Now, as of right now, that doesn't look all that impressive, but let me go get a sponge and I'll show you what's special about stain. I'm getting a big sponge, and what's gonna happen is I'm gonna wipe the stain off the surface of the pot, and the stain will stay inside the nooks and crannies, the veins created by the leaf. See how that accentuates that texture? So the more I wipe off, the lighter it's going to become in the firing process. And I'm gonna wipe the backside too, just so that has a little bit more character to it. See, the iron really builds up on the sponge, so you might have to go and clean your sponge because if too much iron gets on the sponge, it's not going to smooth any more away. It's just going to keep rubbing the same iron around. Okay, so now I didn't wipe the edges, but it's going to be maybe kind of nice to have that edge be dark like that. I'm going to clean my sponge one more time. And then I'm just going to try and take away any remaining iron that I can to really bring out those veins as much as I can. So that looks pretty cool, doesn't it? So now this would get fired up to a hotter temperature, like a high fire glaze. And when it comes out of the kiln, the areas where you didn't wipe it away, like down inside the veins, will be kind of like a tarnished copper penny. And the areas that you did wipe away will be a lighter version of that tarnished copper. So it'll really accentuate those textures. Now, this is a great example of a matte surface. This is not shiny at all, so this is not food safe. But probably not many of us can eat out of these bowls anyway. So that is one of your special options for glazing your leaf bowl. Here's another thing you can do for your leaf bowl project. See this crackled glass look in this coaster of Minnesota? That was created by melting glass in with a clear high fire glaze. So if you want to do that on your leaf bowl, you certainly can. The clear high fire glaze is in a bucket. It looks white. I'm going to paint. I'm going to do probably 2 real nice juicy coats on my pot, making sure to get in all the nooks and crannies. I'm going to do that on the top. I'm going to do that on the bottom. I should have had some newspaper laid out so I don't make so much of a mess. Oh well, that's fine. Okay, I am getting glaze on the foot, but I'm going to wipe that off in a little bit. Okay, so there's my 2 layers of the high fire clear. Flip this over, even it out a little bit. Okay, here's where you get to the fun stuff. So I have a bunch of these flattened marbles. Unfortunately, I don't have very many colors of it. What I have learned is that certain colors of these marbles, the color remains when it goes through the firing, and then in certain colors, the color doesn't remain. So the only colors that really work are greens, amber browns, and blues. I don't have any blue ones in my hands right now, but I think I'm going to use green. So I'm going to put no more than about 4 of these little marbles at the bottom of my bowl, and then I'm going to put some clear glaze on top of them. The clear glaze kind of helps hold them in place, and also as these are getting high fired, it'll help the glass melt into the space and bond with the clear glaze a little bit better. So I could move one up the side and have it stick like that, but it's not going to stay there. It's going to move in the firing, and it's going to melt toward the center. Gravity is going to bring the glass toward the center. So now this would get high fired, and when it comes out of the high fire kiln, it's going to have that cracked effect. Definitely not food safe because bacteria can stick inside those cracks, but it's a really cool look. So if you wanted it just for decorative purposes, this would be a way to go. So no matter which kind of glaze you're using, you must clean up everything when you are done. And if you poured little glaze into a cup like I did with my orange and my black and my clear, you pour that glaze back in the jar it came from, because glaze is the most expensive thing that I purchased for this class. That's why I collect those firing fees from you, because the glaze is hella expensive. A jar of red glaze, like a big gallon jug, $180, people, just for red glaze. So if you're rinsing my glaze down my sink, you're rinsing money down my sink. So any glaze that's left in that cup gets poured back in whatever jar it came from. Use the paintbrush to scrape out any additional glaze that's in that cup. Wash the cup, wash the brush, and put it back where you got it from. If you're using the high fire glazes, wash whatever spoon or stir stick you end up using. Put the lids back on, whatever glazes you end up using, and then put the buckets of glaze back over here. I should also say, do not carry these buckets of glaze by their lids. I had a girl with a full, see how full that is? With a full bucket of glaze last year. She was helping me put these buckets away, and she lifted it by its lid and was carrying it over to the shelf over there, and the weight of all the glaze inside there caused the lid to come free from the bucket. And this is it's maybe about 3.5 gallons of glaze fell all over her clothes and her shoes and the floor and the lockers and the clothes and the shoes of everybody who was within 2 feet of her. It was a tragedy. So don't let that be you. When you're putting your bucket of glaze away, please lift it from the bottom. Wash your cups. And then whatever your glaze space was, wherever it was you were working, is going to be a mess. So grab a big sponge. And clean it up. So I am going to be checking on you throughout the hour. However, my big focus for today is going to be helping those kids who are on the wheels right now, because they're going to need a lot of help, as you will someday. So that's why I recorded this video, to show you where the glaze information was, how to glaze low fire, how to glaze high fire. And so you can hopefully get started on that process without me having to be there to show you every little thing. Certainly, if you have a question about a glaze or how to do something, come over and get me. But after you're done watching this video and you've taken the little quiz at the end of this video to prove that you know the steps, then you can start glazing your work. And if you don't have anything to glaze today, then still take the quiz after watching this video, because someday you might have something to glaze. Maybe you'll choose to fire your next project. So you still need to know where this stuff is and how it works. All right, thanks for watching.